All right, welcome leaders. I want you to think of our time together less like a lecture and more like a practical workshop. Today, we're going to build your personal playbook for navigating the complex and, let's be honest, often unwritten rules of the modern workplace.
So let me just kick things off with a question for you. You're talented, you work incredibly hard, you deliver results. Is that enough to guarantee your success? I've coached hundreds of managers, and what I've seen time and time again is that the answer, unfortunately, is no. Your technical skills, they get you in the game, for sure, but they don't guarantee you'll win. And here's why. The corporate world is a political game. Now, I know that word, politics, it can feel a little cynical, maybe even dirty, but it doesn't have to be. Understanding the dynamics of power and influence isn't about being manipulative. It's a critical leadership skill. It's about having a playbook.
Okay, let's dive into our playbook for today. First, we're going to start with a whole new perspective on what power at work really means. Then, we'll build your foundation, your unshakable reputation. After that, we get into the proactive stuff, how to navigate the landscape and master those high-stakes conflicts. And we'll wrap it all up by tackling the big question every modern leader faces. How do you balance all this with being authentic?
So first up, your corporate power playbook. This is all about shifting your mindset. We're going to stop seeing workplace dynamics as a distraction and start seeing them as the real arena where leadership is tested and proven. So let's redefine office politics, shall we? Forget all the negative stuff you associate with it, the gossip, the backstabbing. For our workshop today, it just means the unwritten rules of influence and power. It's not about being deceitful. It's about developing a sharp, strategic awareness of how decisions really get made and how influence really flows in your organization.
With that new perspective locked in, we can move to our second section, building your reputation. Now, I want you to think of this as your defensive foundation. Before you can even think about playing offense and making big moves, you have to be protected. And your reputation? That's your armor.
So here it is, the 3-step reputation shield. Step 1 comes from Law 5. You have to guard it with your life because that reputation walks into every room before you do. Step 2 from Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Why? It's simple, really. When you're sparing with your words, people listen more closely. They actually project their own thoughts onto your silence, and they often assume you know way more than you're letting on. And step 3 from Law 38, think as you like but behave like others. Look, constantly flaunting how different you are can mark you as an outsider, an easy target. It's so much more powerful to build your influence from within the group norm. And the source material is absolutely crystal clear on this. Reputation is the cornerstone of power. It can protect you, it can project strength for you, but, and this is a big but, once it's damaged, you become vulnerable from every angle. So protecting it has to be priority number 1. Okay, once your reputation is secure, we shift from defense to offense. Section 3 is all about proactively building your influence and, this is so crucial, managing upwards. This is how you don't just survive in the workplace, this is how you thrive. Now this slide is where things get really interesting because it flips so much of what we think of as common sense right on its head. The common mistake? Trying to impress your boss by showing off how smart you are. The power play, according to Law 1, is to make them look more brilliant. When you do that, you become an indispensable asset, not a threat. And same thing for the second one. The common mistake is to burn yourself out doing every little thing. The power play, Law 7, is to leverage your team's skills effectively. Now, this isn't about stealing their work, not at all. It's about positioning yourself as the leader who orchestrates success and takes ultimate responsibility for the outcome. All right, now that we've covered influence, let's move into our 4th section, advanced tactics for those really high-stakes conflicts. This is where the game gets real. We're going to focus on specific techniques for managing rivals and handling disagreements without losing your authority. Let's just play out a scenario. I want you to picture this. You're in a critical meeting. You're presenting your team's project. And suddenly, a colleague starts aggressively picking apart your data, clearly trying to undermine you in front of leadership. Your heart rate spikes. What do?
Well, the playbook gives us a really powerful and kind of non-confrontational tool. Law 44, the mirror effect. The idea is that when you mirror your aggressor, they get confused. Their attack just loses all its momentum because you aren't giving them the fight that they came for.
So here's how you actually apply it in that moment. First, you stay totally calm and match their tone and pace, not their aggression, just their tempo. Then, you restate their main point as a simple question. So, if I'm understanding you, your concern is about the Q3 data? Then you validate the emotion. I can see you're concerned about accuracy. This combination does something incredible. It completely neutralizes their attack and puts the ball back in their court. Now they have to defend their logic, instead of you defending your work. So the crucial point is, you're using their own momentum right back at them.
This brings us to our final and maybe the most important section, the modern leader's dilemma. How in the world do we square these seemingly cold, calculating tactics with our modern ideals of being an authentic, servant leader?
And this slide just illustrates that conflict perfectly, doesn't it? Law 3 says conceal your intentions, but today's leadership gurus preach radical transparency. Law 15 says to crush your enemy, while we're all trying to collaborate and find win-wins. It just goes on and on. Now, this doesn't mean one is right and the other is wrong. What it means is that the path forward requires your judgment. A truly effective leader has to consciously and ethically choose the right tool for the right situation.
So ultimately, the bottom line is this. These laws are tools. That's it. They are not a moral compass. The goal here is not to become some paranoid tyrant. It's to understand the full spectrum of human dynamics. Knowing these laws helps you see when they're being used against you, helps you defend yourself, and helps you apply them ethically and sparingly to become a much more effective and aware leader.
And that brings us to the final question I'm going to leave you with. Power, when you boil it all down, is a neutral tool. A hammer can be used to build a house, or it can be used to tear one down. So as you move forward with this playbook, the real question isn't whether power exists. It does. The question is, how will you choose to use it?